heck, it's funny. You know, I knew there was only going to be a small group of us. I know people from Grand Rapids are friendly. I was scared to death 10 minutes before I hit to come talk to you guys. So every time we put out a new episode, I'm afraid nobody's going to like it. Every time we do an interview, I'm afraid. So I realized though that fear is going to be with me all the time, no matter what I do. And I learned it because I don't know if it was late 80s or early 90s, somewhere in that time, that Nike had this phrase that is, that isn't as sexy as just do it, but it's one that became a mantra of mine. And it's this. I don't know if you guys remember Nike saying this one: feel the fear, but do it anyway. And they always had this big athlete, some star athlete. And then, you know, I was in college at that time. And I realized that this fear that I had, the top athletes, the top performers, they all felt the same fear. If Nike puts this on their stuff, then these people feel fear as well. And I realized that the fear is never going to go away. I have to just feel it, and I have to be okay with it, and I have to work through it. And the big thing about fear I've found that helps me get rid of it is to list out and name the fears. And it was pretty funny because I've been doing this for quite a while. And I was just listening to Tim Ferriss the other day talking about what he does. And Tim Ferriss talked about how he likes to write down all of his fears. When you're super afraid of something, write it out. Because what most of us do is we take the fear and we try to bottle it, right? We try to shove it back in the back of the closet and pretend like I'm not afraid. And you can tell when somebody really has a lot of fear, but they're just trying to mask that they're not. Instead of doing that, give it a name and list it out. Because what I've come to realize is that your brain is incredibly smart, right? There's that Emo Phillips joke that said something about, Emo said he's walking down the street and he said, you know, my brain is the smartest part of my body. And then he said, well, look at who's telling me that, right? So your brain is, but your brain really is incredibly smart. And so trust your brain that these problems are not things to be pushed in the closet. They're things to list out. And then what you do, and this is the big kicker, realize then, and this is the power of writing it out, guys, your brain also then always figures out the solution. It is incredible when I started doing this about 10 years ago, how amazing this works for me. And I'm going to tell you guys something that I haven't talked about publicly anywhere yet. We haven't talked about it on the show. I haven't had an opportunity. We're going into an off week next week. But so we moved back to Michigan last year. Cheryl, my spouse, had what looked to be a fantastic opportunity here. It turned out when she got here that not only was it not a great opportunity, but she was walking into a very toxic workplace. In fact, there is a large number of people, not just Cheryl, but a large number of people are leaving the place that she works. She's very lucky that she's in a job right now that's secure and she can leave. And she will find another job. So we're very lucky in that way, but she really needed to get out. And so she started looking for work around the Detroit area. And during that time, she happened upon this amazing deal in Arizona that we didn't realize. And the deal was, not only would they give her more money than she was making right now, which is incredibly cool, but they also would give us lodging and a car while she's out there. So you guys know, right? The biggest expenses, housing, auto, and then food cost are your top three. But my brain, me being Joe, afraid of everything, my brain starts going into overdrive. So what if I don't like Arizona? Never lived in Arizona, not a desert guy, Kalamazoo guy, kind of like woods and like Four Seasons, not sure I'm going to love it. What the hell do we do with our house? I love our house here. I like where we live. I like the neighborhood. Andy Hill from Marriage, Kids, and Money lives right down the road from me. We have awesome game nights. Board game nights is a lot of fun. What do we do with our stuff? I mean, moving my stuff halfway, not even halfway, 3/4 of the way across the country is going to be a complete bear. And then this is a 6-month deal. She's signing up for this 6-month thing. What the hell do we do after 6 months? Like, where's the certainty there? So I wrote all those out. And And Cheryl and I then went through all of those, and here's what we came up with. If I don't like it, well, then guess what? We move again. I moved to Texas. I lived in a little town called Texarkana, moved back to Michigan, lived in South Carolina, lived in a few different places, grew up, of course, in Kalamazoo. I've moved a few times. I'm not afraid of moving. If I don't like it, well, then we move. What about our house? This is the cool thing I came up with. And this only came about because of what I do, podcasting. 10 years ago, I would have said to you guys, I would have said, if somebody said, well, why wouldn't you just sell your house and not have one? 10 years ago, I would have said, that's great for other people. That's not great for me. But now people like, you know, Chris Mamula stayed at our house. Grant Sabatier stayed here as we've had people come. And I'm surrounded by these people doing this crazy ass stuff all the time. I thought, well, what if we just sold our house? Well, then, okay, well, then what about our stuff? And then I said, why wouldn't we just sell all our stuff? What if we sold everything that we had? Well, then what do we do after 6 months? And then she and I had the craziest thing, which is just life is an adventure. And so it took, at first, when we started talking about this, Cheryl was like, oh, hell no. But she didn't use the word hell. She used a different word. She's like, there's no way we're going to do this. 2 days later, she said, I can't stop thinking about this. I just think this would be so much fun. So here's what we're doing, guys. We are moving to a little town called Globe, Arizona, which is an underserved area for healthcare, the area that she's in. We're going to live there for 6 months. We're going to sell our house here. We're going to sell all of our stuff. So if you want any of my stuff, please just let me know. And then we're going to, after 6 months, I've already rented a house in Bali for a month, just to have a even more crazy adventure. And while we're in Bali, we'll figure out where we're going next. I have no idea where we're going after that. But this is, now you don't have to do something that out there, but by writing it out, we came up with a much more, for us and who we are, and we're not like everybody else, but for who we are, we came up with a solution that was more authentic to who we are. I don't really like the word authentic. All right. I do like relationships though. And I think that this is another opportunity when it comes to this time. And I think it's funny because we're sitting here on a Zoom call, right? And it's because we realize that getting together is something that we all really like, and relationships are something we all really like. And so I just thought I'd go over some of the lessons I've learned about relationships and where the opportunities are here, especially when we're communicating all the time just on social media. And I think these will make you laugh. The first thing.
Hey, Joe, just a heads up too, we'll probably get some questions in the chat throughout.
Yeah, cool.
We did have one that popped up.
Awesome.
So pause, or if you want to keep going, we can.
No, I can't see any of them. So if you don't mind.
I can read them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one's from Kelly, and Kelly was just asking if you or your spouse is more risk averse than the other. And then if so, how you manage that between the two of you.
I think Cheryl is more risk averse at most things than it's funny. We go back and forth. I said Cheryl because right now I had to talk her into this very thing. So I'm kind of in that mode. We find a middle ground, and I'll tell you, so after that first 6 months are up, Cheryl is already talking about how excited she is about that, but also she really likes the town we lived in Texas. So she's looking for opportunities there. I like that as well. I don't think I like it as much as she likes it. So we continue to work through it. I'll tell you the best thing for us, for our marriage, and I was going to get to this later, but I think it's a great time to bring it up now. We have a weekly money meeting, which is either over, which sounds long. It sounds, well, not for us. We're a bunch of money nerds, but maybe for whoever you plan with, it might sound boring. So we keep the meeting short. The meeting is incredibly fun because we always do it every week over wine or pancakes, depending on what time of day it is. If it's in the morning, we used to go to a restaurant and do it over breakfast at a restaurant. If we do it in the afternoon, we pour a glass of wine. It takes 20 minutes and it's really fun. So we just continually work through it. And that's what we're working through right now. I'm happy to move back to Texas. I like this idea of a nomadic lifestyle for a longer period of time. I would love to go just wherever there's good internet. And if we can keep living this life where we just go see a bunch of the world, um, that would be great by me. But anyway, so weekly meeting for us is what works. So when it comes to relationships, seeking to understand before being understood, I think we're running into this a lot on Facebook. Everybody wants to make sure they're understood, right? I think I saw a great meme today about, thank God everybody I know is an infectious disease expert, which is awesome. But understanding other people's point of view. I mean, and to give you an idea, like from where I sit, you know, I'm married to somebody who's in healthcare. And initially I'm like, these people are crazy that want to open up the economy. Are you kidding me? A lot more people are going to die. That doesn't make any sense to me. And then I remember me in 1993, when I not only didn't have any money, I had huge debt. I had monster amounts of debt, and I had job uncertainty, and I wasn't sure where I was going to live. If it was me in 1993, I would be on the front end of, we got to open it up. I will take my chances on this. And that, I think, is a part of seeking to understand before being understood. I'd love it if we yelled at each other a little less. Second is, and I had a great mentor teach me this. I thought this was a great analogy. Every discussion you ever have is a cube. The person who works to see the other person's side of the cube wins. And I think, Sean, you're in recruiting. So, you know, to be somebody that you're working with, trying to go get a job, if I can understand what the company wants that's trying to hire me, you know, needs somebody to take that role, seeking to see the other side of the cube, I think is a big thing. And then I also like to be the dumbest person in the room. I really, I think there's power in good advisors. I think that surrounding yourself with really smart people. I love our Facebook group. I love hanging out in the big ChooseFI Facebook group. But I also think that I don't want the herd mentality to be the way I come down is the truth for me. I want to make sure that I surround myself with really smart people who know me, but who also have my best interest at heart. And then last is to keep that growth mindset. I think that if we keep growth mindset, we're okay with making mistakes. We're okay with screwing it up. We're okay with life being messy. It's when we have a fixed mindset that we get into big problems. All right, that's my woo-woo stuff. And apparently, there we go. Now let's talk about stacking some Benjamins, because that's what we all want to do. So let's talk about opportunities during these dark times in investing. First opportunity is, don't try to buy the dips. Things are always low for a reason. The big key is to figure out why things are low. And the more you understand about why things are low, the more dangerous you realize investing is, and you invest for the right reason. So I look at it, being a guy who grew up in farm country, and I was a detasseler in middle school and high school. Crops get planted at a certain time for a great reason. It needs that season. And then crops get pulled out of the ground at another time. You don't pull out the crops in the middle, and you don't replant in the middle of the season. Stocks and real estate, phenomenal investments for over 10 years. Horrible investments for a 1 or 2 year time frame. On the other side, a savings account, fantastic place to be if you need money in your cash reserve, in your emergency fund. And boy, you're seeing all those people that complained about emergency funds all this time finally going, man, I wish I had one of those, because emergency fund is getting you through it right now if you have one. But some people that I've met love safety. You know, I mean, we've had letters to our show where people have, I mean, this is fantastic for them, but they have $200,000, $300,000 sitting in cash. And the reason they don't invest it is because they're worried about investments. They're worried about volatility. Volatility over those long periods of time, guys, works in your favor. Over a 10-year period, only 2 asset classes historically have always beaten inflation: stocks and real estate. Those are your safest place to be. If you're in a savings account with a goal that is 10 years or longer, you are very safely getting your butt kicked by inflation. You really can't do that. Second thing with investing, I think if everybody looks left, there's also power in looking right. And I'm not contradicting what I said, the laws of the universe about long-term investments, but certainly when you look at investing, what I see all the time is people pick the things that are doing well now, right? Everybody wants whatever is doing well today. And when we would talk about, rebalancing portfolios. So if you're not familiar with rebalancing, rebalancing is, let's say that we've got 50% of our money in stocks and 50% of our money in bonds, right? It's horrible asset allocation, but let's just run with that. Right now, bonds hanging in there a little bit, but stocks have gone down. So now maybe your allocation is you have 35% of your money in stocks and still hanging in there in bonds, so you're up to 65%. Well, rebalancing your portfolio means a couple times a year, you will just get back to that allocation you needed, the 50-50 that you wrote down for yourself that you needed to get where you wanted to go. And that means that while stocks are low, or excuse me, while bonds are higher, you're going to sell some of those bonds, whatever's above 50%, and you're going to buy into stocks. It sounds great. If you read the paperwork, it seems great. We're always going to sell high, buy low. Totally makes sense. Except I'll tell you, when I was a financial planner, which I was a financial planner for 16 years, this is what would happen in some of my client meetings. Okay, Joe, what do we want to do today? Okay, we got this fund right here, the one that has either stayed up or has made money. And my client would go, oh yeah, they wouldn't call it the one that stayed up or made money. It was always the good one, right? Oh, you mean the good one, the one that the one that's rocking. Yeah, that one. Okay, what are you going to do? We put more money in that? Nope. We're not putting more money in that. Okay, what are we doing? We're going to sell some of it. And they'd look at me like, why the hell are we selling some of the good one? Are you kidding me? Well, done pretty well by me. What do you propose we do, Joe? We're going to buy this one. Oh, you mean the crappy one? So you're going to take money out of the good one and you're going to put money in the crappy one. Historically, it's funny, Bloomberg, back when they had a magazine, said that asset allocation was a huge key to your success as an investor. And yet they use this phrase. They said that properly asset allocating and rebalancing takes guts of steel. And I love that phrase, guts of steel, because every time I go to rebalance, I think guts of steel, man. And then I hear people talk about just buy what you know. Hey, I know real estate. So that's what I should do. And that phrase, by the way, buy what you know, goes back to Peter Lynch, probably goes back before him, but Peter Lynch, who ran Magellan for a long time, is noted for saying that. And I hear it all the time online. Buy what you know, buy what you know. That isn't what Peter Lynch said. Peter Lynch started with lead what you know with what you know, but don't go buy it. That's the beginning of your funnel. Start with brands and things that you know, and then have a funnel and decide, do I buy this? Where does it fit? In what quantity? I see people load up on one type of investment because of the fact that they that they think they're doing the right thing by just sticking with what they know. Sean, we have other questions?
Yeah, so Tracy just had a comment, or sorry, Janie. Was that Janie? Yeah, sorry, Janie. You're welcome to share, or I can just read it out. Yeah, no pressure.
It's not a question. It's just I find that the weekly meeting was interesting because I recommend that to my clients as well. And a lot of times it's kind of a rough start getting them going, but once they start seeing the benefit of it, it's huge for the relationship. So I was just making a comment regarding that. So
isn't it it is so huge, and not, Janie, because of the meeting itself, and you already know this, not because of the meeting itself, but you keep this constant discussion going because we keep it short, we keep it fun. We tend to talk about money all week long then, which if we only had a monthly meeting, we wouldn't do it. So I'm glad you're on the weekly train.
And I recommend that they take either a whiteboard or a piece of paper and just leave it on the edge of the counter. And when they think of an idea that they can discuss during those meetings, they add it to the list, and the list keeps getting longer the more they start doing it. And it just prompts conversation and coordination of schedules, and it's just huge because it grows from there.
I love that. What do you find people struggle with most about the weekly meeting?
At the beginning, just carving out the time and making it as important as some other appointment.
Yeah.
You know, carving it out and making it in stone versus that it can flex with other things that are happening in life.
It's funny you say that, because I used to, when I started recommending it, I would have clients do the same thing, and they would just completely stop. And this goes back to the growth mindset thing. So I would have to tell people at the beginning, and I'm sure you do too, I'd have to tell them, you're going to screw this up. You're going to skip a week. You're going to, but get back on the horse. You got to keep, you got to get back on and try it again.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I wanted to go over some things that you won't hear a lot in the community. So use my little soapbox here, guys, while I have a little one to tell you things that I believe that I don't hear enough of online. You know, OG and I, my co-hosts, sit in a rare spot where now we're financial media, where I used to be a financial planner. And so we've seen kind of both sides. And I like that line about being able to hear what advisors are talking about, and also hear what, you know, reading everything that we have to read to make shows every week. And I wish we heard more about this stuff in the community. I wish we wouldn't talk so much about rules of thumb. I get really frustrated working in, I go back to Stephen Covey, starting with the end in mind and working backwards. What do you want? Working backwards is not hard. It just isn't hard. And I don't understand why we continue to have discussions about the 4% rule. Oh my God, shoot me. Why do we have, you know, is a Roth IRA better than a traditional IRA? You know, and all these answers are, it depends, but it really is not that difficult to find out for yourself, to work just a little bit past the rules of thumb. And so when I see rules of thumb, I always get a little frustrated, not because of rules of thumb, but because of, this is an easy equation. You know, I used to give talks at companies, and when I would walk into Chrysler or Microsoft or IBM here, I would always ask people why they would invest in their 401k the way that they invested. And they'd say, well, my risk tolerance, or it was what I could afford. But then when I would ask, based on all that, where's that going to get you? A lot of people had no answer. So there's this very easy equation. It's, I need to save so much money and get so much return to get my goal. And let's say, as an example, we'll just keep using Sean as my example here. Sean needs to save $10 to get his goal. Yeah, right. And he needs an 8% rate of return. So those are his two numbers, 10 bucks and 8% rate of return. Well, then that gives us two cool starting points. So let's say Sean's budget's really tight and he doesn't have 10 bucks. He only has 8 bucks. Well, if I don't know what the goal is, I'm just going to cut my savings and I have no idea what the outcome is. But if I know what the goal is, now I can start looking at investment horizons and philosophies. And by the way, we get above 8%, we start taking some huge undue risk. But my point is, we can start looking at a different asset allocation, different investment mix that might get me to my goal. Or on the other side, let's say that Sean is looking at an 8% return and he looks at the investments historically have done that, and his risk tolerance, right, that we always talk about, his risk tolerance isn't high enough for that. He's like, I get uncomfortable with those investments. I can't sleep at night. Well, that's fine. He can lower it to 6, which is what a lot of people do. But if we do that and we know what the goal is, then what do we have to do? We have to go into the budget and find different ways to save, or we have to push the goal back. So Stephen Covey, going back to my guy again, always talks about when you pick up one end of the stick, you pick up the other end too. I think when it comes to saving, we always forget that. And this is so powerful, this little tiny equation, and it makes so much sense to me. And it really, for my mind, is pretty exciting to get into it. And this is where, no offense to J.L. Collins, because I think he's a brilliant guy, but I really don't understand VTSAX. I super do not. The efficient frontier is one step further. It's won a Nobel Prize. It is amazing. And it's just one step further. And then when I'm talking to somebody about VTSAX versus the efficient frontier, somebody says, well, VTSAX is pretty easy. I get there because it's easy. It is one step further to figure out where you're at on the efficient frontier and have an investment mix that fits you. So efficient frontier, for people that don't know, was a Nobel Prize winning effort by a guy named Harry Markowitz. He actually looked at returns versus time, and then looked at, returns versus risk, and then looked at over every time frame, there is a and different asset mix, there's a dot you place there. So if these are returns, low to high, and then across left to right, you've got your risk level, you'll have low and left cash, and high and right, you'll have small company stocks, right? But you can plot over different time frames all these dots. And so we started plotting all these dots, and he noticed that there's this line where there's no dots north of it, meaning that for every return that you needed historically, there is a most efficient way that got you there. By the way, that does change a little bit all the time. So it doesn't mean it's going to be in the future, but it's going to be close. And it's much closer than VTSAX is by itself. So, and I get it. And by the way, and like I said, no offense to our friend JL Collins, because I think getting everybody just on the train of thinking about stocks and having a mix where they're using all stocks is badass. It is fantastic. I just think we've gone overboard. It's like JL Collins had the Mayflower, and we're all standing on the edge of America going, there it is. And we can take one more step and get off the boat. And there's just one more. So, but it's great for him that we've moved that conversation. And then I think we need to be looking for holes in our plans, and we need smart people around us that aren't invested as much as we are in our plans to get there. And yet online, I consistently see that low cost equals best. Low cost does not equal best. Low cost equals low cost. And even Vanguard said that having great people that you're not emotionally tied to, and I'm not a financial advisor, I'm just saying that having smart people around you not invested in your goal, Vanguard did research that showed that you're going to have a higher return if you do that. And by the way, it's not what they do, it's what they make sure you don't do. And there's only 3 or 4 inflection points during your whole life where you're going to screw it up. And I think somebody looking holistically, I get tired of the S&P. Why don't I invest in VTSAX versus having an advisor? 2 different things. Your advisor could tell you to invest in VTSAX. Your advisor is not a exchange traded fund picker guy or woman. If your advisor is an exchange traded fund picker woman or picker guy, you should fire them. They should be holistically looking at where your Achilles heel is and helping you cover those up. So low cost is a dragon, and you should be fighting that, and you should stay low cost. And I think that makes a lot of sense. But that dragon, I think, is really overstated. I think the big dragon we fight is we think we know something and we don't know what we don't know. And the bigger dragon, frankly, not for people on this call, because you guys are here hanging out talking about money nerd stuff, but you guys know in society, the big dragon is we don't do anything, right? We just do nothing. That's the dragon most people fight. And sadly, most of us, then they tune into people that know stuff, and they get into the fee fight right away instead of the, God, go do something, go save. You can tell I get a little worked up about that one. Chris Manuel and I had a great discussion about that when he was here. That was fun. All right. Savings opportunities. These are awesome. Always hide money from yourself if possible. That is a huge one. Hiding money from yourself is the best way to save. Tipping yourself. There's this app I love called Tip Yourself, literally called Tip Yourself, where it's these guys in Chicago. I love it. I use it. I build my vacation funds around it. Every time I go out on a 5-mile run, I'm a runner, I try to tip myself a couple bucks. I tip a waiter. I tip myself to put money in this little savings account that's separated from all my other money to use on fun things. I love the idea of tipping yourself. The weekly money meetings that we were talking about earlier, I think is a huge thing. And then think like an engineer. Like we talked about earlier with fear, think about all the things that could go wrong, list those things, get rid of those when you build. So I had back when I was an advisor, I had a client that was built highways. And she told me that that's what they did. They would put out the plans for the highway. They'd think of everything that could go wrong, and then they'd eliminate those possibilities. And only when they'd eliminated all those possibilities would they start building. So this means having an emergency fund, right? Taking care of your debt, making sure that your budget is, your cash flow is good. So if we get in a situation like today that, I don't feel like Dr. Phil going, how's that working for you? having the appropriate insurances, think like an engineer. Love that. And then working the fundamentals. I always believed, you know, we talk about the pillars of FI. I grew up learning about the 4 cornerstones: emergency fund, good cash flow, good cash reserve, your protection planning, your short-term savings, and your long-term savings. Similar stuff. I want to talk just briefly about what we do. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I do want to talk a little bit about us and why we create the show, because it's the same reason that Jonathan and Brad created their show. What's cool though is that we have a different philosophy than Jonathan and Brad have. Our goal is completely the same. It's financial literacy. I absolutely, there are no two more fun people to hang out with, by the way, than Jonathan and Brad. We did an event in Philadelphia, which we called the Podtastrophe. And it was Jonathan and Brad and OG and I, and we had maybe, God, it was 120 people at this microbrewery. And it was, we had so much fun, but here's what was funny. There was this, you could tell who the stackers were and who the ChooseFI fans were, because this guy, so we're all wearing name tags. This guy is trying to talk to Brad, and he comes by us and he looks at my co-host OG and looks at him and goes, "Oh, excuse me, Og, I really want to talk to Brad." Like, no idea who my co-host was. And it was very funny. Our show's based on the science of play. I personally believe that I learn more if I'm not trying to learn. Money nerds prefer to just learn straight ahead. Our show very much has a different audience, and it is all based on play. If I can do something that every day resembles more of like car talk, our show's based on car talk. I was mowing my lawn listening to Car Talk when we thought of the show. If you're not familiar with Car Talk, it's these two guys, Click and Clack, who talk about cars, but you never learn, excuse my language, but you never learn, well, I'll keep it clean. You never learn anything about a car listening to Car Talk, and yet you're enveloped in car culture. And I realized that there's so many people that out there that need to have this money conversation we're having tonight that don't, that if we can find a way to bring that to them. So we're always working on making the show more playful and tighter and frankly, just more fun. Which is why I think sometimes around Money Nerds, we get a bad rap about, we're just financial entertainment, where we're really trying to bring you 5 ideas every show, but we're hiding them as much as possible. The show has ADD on purpose to try to keep new people in the game. You know, when we do meetups, people always ask me, they're like, "So which shows do you like? Which shows don't you like?" Let me give you the numbers. The ChooseFI show quickly became a bigger audience than ours. Our show has about 145,000 people, according to PodTrack, who know who we are. We'll have maybe 40,000 people listen to a show. I don't know how many people Brad and Jonathan have listened to ChooseFI, but I would guess it's closer to the 55,000 range. Paula's show, Afford Anything, about the same as ours. Dave Ramsey is obviously the bajillion-pound gorilla in our space. He has between 1 million and 2 million people listen to an episode of his show. There are 330 million people in America. 2 million people listen to Dave Ramsey. Nobody's paying attention to what we do. So whenever people ask me, they're like, "Oh, which show don't you like? Who don't you like?" I'm like, we're all trying to get to the same place. We're all on the same team. It's pretty exciting. I really feel like there's this renaissance. If you look back at 10 years ago, your choices of people to listen to were, well, discounting Jim Cramer, only because I think Jim's more of a stock jock. Your choices really were Susie, maybe Gene Chatsky, Dave Ramsey, and Clark Howard, right? And now you've got the ChooseFI guys, you've got the Mad Fientist, you've got Paula, you've got our friends over at Bigger Pockets. You've got so many different outlets. It's super, super exciting. So, and our goal is always diversity, and not diversity like a checkbox at a job. It's, I want to have somebody who's young and is just starting their journey, and somebody who's older and more of an expert, and then somebody who's, so we're always looking at the schedule to try to mess with people's heads to bring on somebody different all the time. But overall, I think financial literacy is really, really what we're after. So, ta-da! That is my little presentation, guys.
Joe, that was great. Yeah, thank you for coming on. You know, I appreciate the counterpoints too, and it's so so great that I think we had Chris right before this, and you sharing that point of counterpoint, but still being able to have good discourse. So I think I imagine there's probably some questions from this group. There might also be some fatigue of us spending a lot of time on Zoom these days too. So don't think that is a bad thing.
Dude, I want to talk about what Steve talked about. He talked about board game night. So let's talk about board game night. We got to do that. I want to know if Steve's still here. I want to know what game Steve likes.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Well,
tell me what games you like.
I watched your interview with PT Money from years ago on YouTube today.
Yeah.
And in the background, you have like hundreds of games. You own all those?
Yes. My co-author of, we're trying to do a book deal right now, and we have a great agent, and actually my chapters are due next week. But my co-author is a woman named Emily Guy Birkin, who's a really good finance writer. And she said, what the hell are you going to do with your games when you move to Arizona? But then she had a great idea. She goes, you know what you do? Give them to your friends. And then every time you go visit a friend, you'll get to visit your games too. It's like my games will all have foster parents now. So the one thing I collect are games. I got about 300 games that I own. But finance related games, I love a game called Stockpile. Stockpile is a really fun, light stock market game that your family will like. Super fun. There is even there's an expansion that you can get that adds in commodities and bonds and insider trading and all kinds of crazy stuff. Stockpile is cool.
Is that kind of like Pit?
No, but I like Pit too. Dude,
Okay.
Pit is way fun. Yes.
Okay.
I can't play Pit because my wife always kicks everybody's ass. She's like a Pit savant. So for those of you that don't know Pit, Pit, you just get, it simulates a commodities pit, and you shuffle all these cards, but you've got like wheat and hay and all these different suits, and you're trying to get all the same suit in your hand. And when you trade, you can't tell everybody what you're trading. You just have to trade light cards and say a number. So everybody starts yelling, there's a bell, and you yell 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. And then you find somebody else, and you're trading cards back and forth, trying to put together a hand that all matches. It's crazy fun. But Stockpile is one that I really like. Economic Engine, one of my favorite games is Power Grid. Power Grid is a game, we call it Monopoly for smart people. Power Grid is, the rules are a little tough when you first learn, but then it's fairly easy to play once you learn it, but there's a definite hump to get over. But this theme is going to sound really boring. But when I talk about what we do at our show with people that aren't in finance, I always use Power Grid as an example, because Power Grid, you're trying to build a power grid through the United States. So everybody owns a power company, and you have a bunch of power plants. And now nothing could sound more freaking boring than that, right? But what's cool is, so you're bidding on different types of plants. There's coal plants, oil plants, solar plants, wind power, nuclear power, all these different types of plants. And then you buy resources. And what you learn playing the game, and the game doesn't try to teach anything, like educational games suck. But what the game does teach you inadvertently is coal and oil are expensive resources over time. And if you're competing with everybody else for those resources, the price goes up. And even though the plant is cheap, fueling them can be incredibly expensive if the economy sucks. You know, if those, well, not now, you could probably use oil for nothing, right? I mean, we could have bathtubs full of oil right now. But you know, wind and solar, phenomenally expensive to build, but over time, much less expensive. So The game teaches me nothing. It's super fun. Now I find that when I'm flipping through my Flipboard, reading articles about the economy, and I come across something about power, I always stop and I'm intensely interested in this crap that I would have never been interested again, only because I play Power Grid. It's like this really cool non-teaching thing that builds your thirst just enough. So
It sounds like a mix between maybe like Settlers of Catan and SimCity, or
it is a little more like SimCity.
okay.
You start off in a city, you decide to power it, and then you put another plant in the next city, and then a plant in the next city, and you try to build this whole network out. And then every turn you have to power up your plants, and as you power up your plants, then you get paid based on the number of things that so you bid on plants, you build out your cities, you collect resources, use those resources to power as much of it as you can, you get paid, and then you do it again. And whoever can power up, I think 14 cities first is the one that wins the game. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Those are two I like. Oh, Cooper. There's some people here that know me. So Cooper's staying with us. Cooper's our cat, by the way. So unless you want him, if you want him, Cooper's a cat who's like a dog. Any favorite business enterprise resources? Kelly, what do you mean by that?
Hi.
Hi.
I just
Kelly.
always.
It's Kelly.
Hi,
Kelly.
it is Kelly. How are you?
Good.
Good. I just, as an aside, whenever you're in interviews or in your show, and you like mention just your business growth and then selling your business and different ways you think about business, and then the importance and value of monetizing the work you do. Yeah, I just love hearing all of that. And then I'm wondering what your like resources are or favorite.
Oh, I've got a big one, Kelly.
Yeah.
I've got one that is pivotal. It's if you haven't read the E-Myth, the E-Myth is the book to read. I mean, it is the #1 book to read. Has anybody here read the E-Myth?
I think I have, and then I think I have to read it. I audiobooked it, and I think I have to read it again.
Yeah, Michael Gerber, and the woman operates a bakery. It's a story about a woman who owns a bakery. Yeah. And then they systematize it so it's like McDonald's. So they and basically the system is your solution. And it's funny because now, I now am helping Doc, and I'm part owner of the Earn and Invest podcast. It used to be What's Up Next. And that's what Doc and I are putting in place, is the same. We're putting systems in place because I think systems are the answer to everything.
Like selling the process, right? Is that
making sure that you have a process so that you can always work from the process instead of reinventing the wheel? Because what I find is that we have a problem, and we'll go attack that one little problem instead of saying, how do we make sure this problem never comes up again? That, by the way, is the same thing that we use with automation. I mean, if you're using automation the right way, and I think, Jeannie, with your clients, you probably look at this, which is for automating your finances is great, because if you discover something really cool and you automate it, like as an example, you cut the cord on cable and you save $70. If you don't automate it, you're going to have to discover that $70 again later because of the fact that you're just going to go spend it. But if you automate it right away and have that money get saved, now you capture the $70 not once, but you capture every single month. So now you've ended up saving a ton of money over a year just by automating the process. This is the same thing for businesses. Something screws up and you don't say, how do I fix it this one time? You say, how do I make it so this never happens again? That's my favorite resource by far.
awesome? Thanks.
My favorite, Robin, my favorite educational self-help book. Educational, Robin, in which way? I'll tell you my favorite money book. My favorite money book is actually not somebody who's in any of our communities. It's this guy named Ken Honda wrote this book called Happy Money. I believe this idea of gratitude, that when you have great, he's like the Marie Kondo of money. And I love this idea that when you have gratitude, that a dollar enters your wallet, that it's that you're going to do better by that money. I also love the idea that the relationship you had that helped create that dollar, and having the gratitude of having that relationship makes it so that you respect those relationships even more, and try to get along better with people. And then, he even talked about when you owe money and you're working your way out of debt, just having gratitude that people trust you to pay them back. Like it was such a cool eye opener for me about debt. It was so refreshing. It was a whole different thing. That's one, Robin, that I like. I'm always reading educational self-help stuff, but the self-help stuff I'm always reading is how to try to be more creative. We're always trying to make the Doug character on our show that we write for every show, try to make him funnier and a little less stupid. And that's always a challenge. But this week, yesterday's episode especially, I think we finally kind of nailed it.
Hey, Joe, do you mind restating that book that you're talking about, the gratitude for the money both ways, whether you're lending or whether you're...
Yeah, it's called Happy Money.
Okay.
And it's a guy named Ken Honda. And it's funny because Paula and I both had interviewed Ken, and I love the conversations I have with Paula. And I feel very lucky that she's been on our show for a long time, and we've gotten to be friends, because she and I will have these super long conversations. And so she interviewed Ken and I interviewed Ken, and I was freaking blown away. And then I'm talking to her the next week, because, you get these authors, you guys have seen this, you get these authors when they're on tour. So they're on everybody's show at the same time, right? So you're always trying to make your interview a little different, talk to people about different stuff. But Ken came on my show, I'm blown away. I talked to Paula, she's like, yeah, he was okay. And we had a conversation for 2 hours about Ken Honda. And then, and she went back and reread it because of the conversation that we had. And I think I even got more out of that book because we had that conversation. So it might not hit you hard at first, but, I think for a lot of people, it's the time and place, right? Yeah, Steve wants to know about Frontier versus VTSAX. So VTSAX is a nice mix of every size stock. You'll have small companies, you'll have large companies, you get a little bit of everything. So what J.L. Collins did was convinced us, number one, that an all stock portfolio can be your friend, even though you'll see big downturns like you see now. If you've got a long-term approach, you're going to be okay. And the second thing is having this diversification can be easier than you think. So having it in one fund is the easiest of easy things. Buy one fund and you don't have to worry about it at all. Yet you look at the next step, which is the efficient frontier. And all you have to do is do a Google search. By the way, here's something I do. This is just a little thing because I search stuff all day. I use Bing. And it's funny because people that know me originally they're like, oh, you're the one guy that uses Bing, right? You're the Bing guy. Well, here's the reason I use Bing. It's not because my kid works for Microsoft now. It's because of the fact that Bing pays you to search. And my search results are the same results I get with Google, and I have to search all day. I don't get a lot of money from Bing, but I get probably $20 or $25 in Amazon dollars, Amazon gift cards that I wouldn't get if I just use Google. So that's why I almost said do a Bing search and Bing efficient frontier, and you'll find sites that do that. I agree, Janie. Starting off with the why, I think that's why it's so important that people read. There's a book, Vicki Robbins' book, but Vicki Robbins' book is the best place to start because it really is more about philosophy than it is about money, I think. And I think for a lot of people, it changes their entire viewpoint. I feel like I feel like the financial independence movement went through 3 stages. I felt like the first stage was Vicki writing that book. I thought Mr. Money Mustache then turned it into he jokes about turning it into a cult. an unintended cult and making it fun. And then Jonathan and Brad really brought it to the much more of a mass audience, which is really cool. But definitely have to go back to Vicky about that real why. Is Antonella asking about board games? I'm looking back up at comments that we missed. You'll buy my board games if I'm selling them?
That was before you said you were going to give them away, which was very sweet and nice, and you should do that.
Well, I'm doing it for selfish reasons though, so that I get to keep playing them. Because I've already started giving them to, like, I don't know if you guys know Andy Hill at Marriage, Kids and Money. He's a super guy. It's a fun podcast for families. And yeah, Andy and a bunch of other people come to our game nights. And so I just took like 25 games over to Andy's house. And I'm already having separation anxiety.
Joe, what's it like being
Yeah.
a public in the public space? Like, what's the best thing about it and what's challenging?
I'll start with challenging first. The challenging part is realizing that everything you say is everything that you say is you have a bigger microphone than they think that you have. And there is, and you have to remember there's people listening who aren't responding to everything, but they definitely have a feeling about everything that you say. And not getting emotional when somebody doesn't like what you do gets difficult sometimes. I got to tell you, any creator will tell you that a 1-star review on iTunes, you'll get 35 5-star reviews in a row and you get 1 star, and all you do is think about the 1 star all day long. You're like, are you kidding me? I'll give you an example. 3 days ago or 4 days ago, somebody gave us a 1-star review for a guy who hasn't been on our show in 3 years. Said that they don't like, if anybody's a longtime fan of our show, Greg McFarland used to be on our show. I got a 1-star review about Greg McFarland. He hasn't been on my show in over 3 years. I don't know how the hell they even found that show, but they decided that we were worthy of a 1-star review. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? So, and to some degree, your product is, like, I like the art of making a podcast. I like that, but it also means that to some degree, our show is like your 3rd grade art project. Like when I was a 3rd grader, I would take this thing home to mom and I'd show her this art project, which is really horrible, but I think it's awesome. And my favorite time because of that is when I'm loading a show I'm uploading a show that I've heard and nobody else has heard. And now it's not mine anymore. It's yours as much as it's mine. And I think that's really cool. So I don't know how to answer that beyond that. I think that sometimes it's very difficult for the people around me to realize that I'm talking about us and our life in public all the time. I mean, I feel bad for Cheryl sometimes because people know way more about us, than like when somebody asked about Cooper. I'm like, oh my God, my cat. So that part's kind of weird.
You mentioned Cheryl's in healthcare, and I know we talked briefly about that, but what's she involved in right now? And I know Detroit's, particularly challenging. What's life like for you guys right now being involved with Detroit and COVID-19?
So she works with kids. So she works in pediatrics. And so luckily she's not directly in the line of fire. There's another person over here, Kat Elford. I don't know if you guys know Kat. Kat's husband is in the hospital, Beaumont, which is hit hard. And he comes to our game nights, or used to when we had them. And Jonathan, just the stories that he gives us are just crazy. She's only had 2 possible run-ins. And so like she does all of her grocery shopping so that, because she may have been exposed already, she does her grocery shopping. She goes out in public. And I told her the other day that I feel sometimes like a hostage right now because Cheryl's like, no, I'll go get that for us. I'm like, okay, I can't go anywhere. but I realize that's because she's already there. But like last week, they had a patient in their office who went in the waiting room, filled out a thing and said, nope, haven't been exposed to coronavirus, told the first people out there, got back into the room and immediately said, yeah, my husband had coronavirus, but it's been 7 days, so we're good. She's like, are you kidding? She's had that happen twice where people have come in, but generally she's doing okay, thanks, and not in the line of fire. But it's ugly here. Like for what we're doing, for where we are, and I don't want to get political, but for where we are, I think that the governor's like severe lockdown has been a good thing. I think for where I used to live in Vicksburg, you know, south of Kalamazoo, it's crazy. Like I think this is more of a, if it were county by county or town by town that people could open up and do things, I think and that's not just for Michigan. I think that's across the nation. I think it would be better. Because hearing about people not able to go out on their own private beach doesn't make any sense to me. Aaron asked, was being in the finance space always the plan, or did you explore other careers before becoming? So I became a financial planner, Aaron, by accident. I had a friend. I had a ton of debt, and I was working in a water treatment company in Lansing, literally doing like water softener stuff. And I was helping book the leads and the appointments for people. Like it was very much dead end job territory. And there was a friend of mine who called me and said, and he worked for a company that would become American Express Financial Advisors. He wrote to me and said, hey, this was a quote, "We don't normally hire people like you, but I think you'd be good at this." And Marcus knew me very well. My son's an engineer. My wife's dad, my father-in-law, before he died, one of my best friends, he was an engineer. Her uncle was the head of engineering at civil engineering at Michigan State. Like, I love engineering. Had I known, but I grew up in, you know, a farm town and thought that an engineer was the person that drove the train. So I had no idea. Otherwise, I think I would have been an engineer. But and that engineering thing, even though I came in with a huge deficit versus the people that started with me, which were a lot of finance majors, very quickly that became my competitive advantage. My competitive advantage has always been that I can talk about money like the guy next door versus a finance person. You know, the finance majors would talk over people's head, and I was just another dude who screwed a bunch of stuff up and figured it out somewhat how to get out. So that was it. So exploring other careers, I was exploring a lot of different stuff, and financial planning found me. I always thought, though, it was cool. What I didn't like when I got hired, I didn't like the fact that it really was selling a bunch of products. Then it was all commission-based stuff. It was all commissions. Which was difficult and not what I wanted to do. I really like the people like Gene Chatsky on the Today Show that were showing all the cool little tips and tricks that you could do, you know, with your money. Use this app, do this thing, have this budget this way. I thought that was really cool. And at first I was told by my managers, you didn't get paid to do that. But then I figured out early on that the more I taught people how to be good with their money and then just inserted the stuff into their plan that actually worked, even though I was in this commission, because everybody was commissions then, even though they were commissions, people were very happy if it fit. If it didn't fit and I was trying to be Joe Sales guy, it was absolutely horrible. By the way, and that brings up something else, which is I do get frustrated with bloggers when they talk about commission-based advisors, having been one before. And I get it. And by the way, would I hire a commission advisor? Nope. I would do what everybody says to do. I would hire a fee-only advisor. This is the problem I have, though. A lot of the freaking bloggers who are telling you to go with fee-only advisors have affiliate relationships with a bunch of products that they get paid on when you buy them. You know what that is? They're commission advisors. It's exactly what they are. They're pointing the finger, telling you not. I just think it's very hypocritical. It drives me crazy. I'm like, you shouldn't be pointing the finger so hard at these people when you are one. Schitt's Creek. Do you guys watch Schitt's Creek? My favorite character on Schitt's Creek. I love it. These are my favorite questions. Let's not talk about money. Let's talk about Schitt's Creek.
Yep. I'm trying to mix in some softballs for you.
Dude, Schitt's Creek is fantastic. Who's your favorite character?
I kind of like some of the minor ones like Twyla and Roland and stuff.
But yeah, can somebody tell us what it actually is? I don't know which. I've seen like the link and
okay.
Yeah. David is awesome. So Schitt's Creek is it's a half-hour long, and it really took the country by storm just the past maybe year and a half. But they went 6 seasons. The 6th season just ended a couple weeks ago, and but it stars Eugene Levy, who is the dad from American Pie, and Catherine O'Hara, and they were together back in. If you ever get a chance to go back and watch SCTV, the Canadian version of Saturday Night Live, back when that was around, those two and John Candy and the guys who were the whatever brothers, the Great White North guys. Okay.
Rick Moranis.
Yes, Rick Moranis, and I think his name was Dave Thomas, because I think his name was the same name as the Wendy's guy. So anyway, what's that?
Strange Brew.
Yeah, Strange Brew, exactly. So, but they were on SCTV, and so Eugene Levy's son, Daniel Levy, and his daughter, who plays Twyla in the show, like the 3 of them are 3 of the main characters on the show, and they built out the cast. They asked Catherine O'Hara if she'd do it. And the show was really underground for the first couple seasons, and nobody paid it. Frankly, I'd heard about it, Schitt's Creek, because I watch a lot of stuff, and I thought it was the dumbest name ever, and I didn't want to watch it because I hated the name. And then I finally started watching it like a year ago, and that show, the character development in that show in a short amount of time, how quickly they develop the emotions, and I've never watched a sitcom kind of show where I'm, the room there, that 6th season, Steve. If
I
you
still haven't seen it yet. I only started this whole show 3 weeks ago, and I just finished season 5 today.
Sam, have you watched has anybody watched all 6 seasons? The last season, I went to a military college before I went to Michigan State. I went to the Citadel, so I'm not supposed to say that I cried at anything. But holy cow, that last season, the room got dusty. There was some dusty crap in the air because I kept going like this. At a comedy, you got so attached to those characters. By the way, the last season, after every episode, Daniel Levy, the guy that's really the main creator of the show, they have, after the show, if you watch it on Hulu, they have a show that's the making of that episode. And so they sit with a bunch of the characters and they talk about how they made the episode. And I like that all the way through this last season as all the characters talk. It was super.
How were you able to see season 6?
You can watch it right after it comes out on Hulu. So Netflix has it. Once the season's over, it goes to Netflix. But while it's on, if you're okay watching it with commercials, you can watch it on Hulu.
Okay.
Yeah, Brittany's got it. Rich family friends find out their money was stolen. Rich family finds out their money was stolen. They bought this town as a joke called Schitt's Creek. And dad gave it to son. Eugene Levy gave it to his son as a joke because it was named Schitt's Creek. And so it's the only thing they have because the IRS said it wasn't worth anything, and they end up living in this beat up motel. So you got this classic story of rich family meets hometown America, right? And they think everything about hometown America is backwards. And the people in hometown America think that they're a bunch of rich idiots. And the friction between them really makes a lot of great comedy.
I love how they're just terrible with money, but then is it Dave comes into the 40 grand from when that one business was sold, and then he's like, we should save it. He's like, he can't even get the words out. It's so funny.
The whole family wants to spend it all immediately.
Yeah.
We should save it. Oh, wait till you find out. I won't spoil it, but there's another character in the show who's a multi-millionaire. You'll find out later.
In real life or on the show?
No, on the show. The character
Oh,
on the show has bajillion dollars and could have helped him the whole time, and didn't.
Okay.
So, very, very fun. What else are you guys watching? Anything good?
Just finished Ozark. That's a good one about money.
I gotta watch that show. Everybody's told me I'd like. So, I started watching that, Sean, 1 o'clock in the morning one night, and I was hammered. And I made it halfway through the episode, and it was really good. But I'm like, I gotta watch this sober because I can't. It was brutal. Episode 1 was brutal.
I think it's good both sober and not so sober.
Oh, Billions. So Sam, Billions is interesting because my co-host OG loves Billions, but it's on, I feel like I want to control the number of subscriptions I have. It's on the one flipping subscription I don't have right now, which is Showtime. The Good Place. The Good Place is fantastic. What's The Stranger?
It's like a single season British show, and it's like this this guy gets approached by a stranger, and the stranger told him that his wife faked a pregnancy. And and then she disappears, and it like spirals down into this story that's just crazy, and it's like a perfect ending. So I hope they don't bring it back for another season. It's like just a single season. But yeah, it's really crazy where it goes. A good one to check out.
Oh, that is awesome. I am going to check that out.
I like some of those like mini series, single season things, so you don't just get like hooked and then you just continuously keep watching it because you're hooked. And
there's one like that, Aaron. That's is Jeff Daniels is a really bad guy. It's a Western, Godless. Did you watch Godless?
No, I'll have to check that one out.
So Godless is a town. It's a town around a mine. And they have a huge mining accident. All the men in the town live in or worked in the mine. The basic premise is from the very beginning, all the men in the town are dead. So it's a town that's completely women. And there's this bad guy, Jeff Daniels, and his horrible people. Well, and the sheriff is the one man in town. And so you get these women trying to defend this town against this horrible guy. Every time Jeff Daniels comes on screen, you know something really messed up is going to happen. Like it got to the point that by episode 4, Jeff Daniels would come on screen, and Cheryl and I would go, "Oh, here we go," because every single time it was just horrible. He played the most horrible person. It was really good.
Well, he is from Michigan.
He is. Did you see Moonlight? Anybody see Moonlight over Escanaba, his play? That is, if you ever get a chance to see his play, Moonlight over Escanaba, they showed it here in Detroit back before we moved, 10 years ago. We went to watch it and at the Gem Theater, and they bring it back every once in a while. That show is flipping hilarious, and it's more hilarious us being from Michigan. Like it is a show about everything Michigan. It's
not Escanaba in the Moonlight. It's Moonlight over
Escanaba in the Moonlight. Isn't that what it's called? Is it called?
Yeah,
yes.
I met someone that's from that town, Escanaba, and literally like that's the only thing they're known for, and people like go there to visit the town, and they all have like the story down, and they tell it's really interesting.
Isn't that awesome? Yeah.
Speaking of Jeff Daniels, I saw somebody redid a Volkswagen Beetle to look like the Mutt Cuts van from Dumb and Dumber.
How great would that be? I'd like to drive around like the Oscar Mayer Wiener mobile sometime. That'd be fun.
I've actually ridden in it. My parents are grocers, so
really
in a giant grocery cart when I was a kid.
Oh, that's awesome. How the hell do you control the grocery cart?
I know it had a V8 too. That was the crazy thing.
What?
Grocery cart with some pickup. That's awesome.
What do you guys all think about Tiger King? I thought everyone had heard of it until my coworker asked who Carol Baskin was today. And I said, she's from Tiger King. And she goes, "What's Tiger King?" Exploded that she hadn't seen it. She's like 30 or something and she had never heard of it.
That's funny. I've heard of it. I've never watched it. I just feel like, Sam, that my brother-in-law told me, he's like, it is awesome. And you can feel your brain like being eaten away as you watch it. Like your brain cells are going away about how dumb it is.
Yes. I'm told if you make it through the first one or two, then you'll get hooked, but it's really hard to get after the first one thinking this is real life for people.
I saw a meme today that said, look at this, Calvin and Hobbes. This is what Calvin and Hobbes look like as grown up, and it's him with the tiger, you know?
Yeah.
It was pretty good. That's what I love about having to be online all the time now, is some of the memes we're seeing are hilarious. When I can get around everybody being an expert about the condition we have and just focus on funny memes, it's good.
Did you see the one? It was Baskin Robbins, and it said not related to Carol Baskin.
Not the same thing. What would you have? I know enough about that show to know, would you have to have like ice cream with a knife in it or something, or, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't actually watch it. I was like reading the book next to the person watching it and trying not to, but I kept getting sucked in. It was like a train wreck. It was horrible.
That's what my brother-in-law said. He's like, you can't not watch it.
Yeah.
It is so,
and you can't get the time back from your life. That you just lent to it.
Every time I thought I was doing good, all of a sudden there'd be new sparkles on that guy's shirt, and I'd be like, what is he wearing? And then get distracted again.
That's funny. We are watching right now The English Game, which is the new series by Julian Fellows, who did Downton Abbey. So if you like Downton Abbey, it's his new project, and I really like it. It's the same feeling as Downton Abbey. So if you didn't get into Downton Abbey, you probably won't like it. But if you did, English Game seems to be. I'm only 2 episodes in, but we like it.
Hey, Joe, I had a question for you. I had heard on a podcast that you refer to yourself as a reluctant landlord. Are you still a landlord now?
Yes. Yeah, but we're going to sell that too.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to sell that property too, just so I can be completely unencumbered. I didn't want to be a landlord just because I know myself, and I know that that's not my forte. In fact, it's funny. I took this test called a Colby test, which you guys might have heard of, which is what are you good at? What are you not good at? And it was pretty funny. Cheryl started laughing when I took this thing, because when the results came back a couple days later, it said, you should not work on small electronics around the house. Like it was, or excuse me, small appliances around the house. And it was funny because our dishwasher was broken at the time, and I watched like 4 YouTube videos, and I was in the middle of fixing it. And she's like, just hire somebody. Just please. There's things you're great at, things you're not great at. And being a landlord is not me. But when we moved to Texas, we were moving, right as the economy was getting really bad there in 2008. So it was when we first put the house in the market, I thought it would sell fast enough that we could get out. And by the time we actually had it ready to go, literally a month later, the market had already cratered and we were done. So luckily, this is not luckily for me, bad for him. Friends of ours were going through a divorce. That's the bad part. The good part for me was that the guy needed someplace to stay. He's a neat freak. He also is owns a landscaping company and loves to do all the stuff himself. So he has been my renter after having my first 2 renters were horrible. And then I found him and he was fantastic.